Welcome back to Restaurant Food Fest, everybody. It is a beautiful early summer day.
Yes. Very nice out.
Yes, that's why we're in an air-conditioned room.
Very nice out.
Very nice means warm. Fat guys don't like heat.
Not a bit.
Mm-mm.
So this week we're going to do episode 68, and once again we're going to answer a bunch of questions from Miguel.
Yeah, we've been saving them up, Miguel.
And we told you we'd put a show together just for you.
Again, yes. We answered a couple of them during our last shows. Did one or two, but he's writing some good ones. And there are actually some in-depth questions, so we figured we'd just do another brief show on Miguel Asks. And because from what we've been hearing, the questions he asked help a ton of people out there.
Yeah.
So we're going to go on from there. Ward, you get to read them because I can't see and you have glasses.
Once the glasses take over. The first question is, I'm trying out infused oils, and I understand that there are two methods to use them. How do they work, hot and cold method?
Okay, is it to use them or to make them?
It says use to make them.
Make them, okay. Well, they're both really easy. The cold method is if you would take a jug of oil and put it in a bottle, any type. Even like my wife just picked this up, an oil spritzer for me. If you would take something like this, put your olive oil in it, and put basil in it. Now, and let it set. The longer you let it set, the more those essential oils come out of the product and infuse your oil with it. Now you have an infused oil. That's the cold method. And you can do any type of flavoring you want. It can be garlic, can be thyme, anything that has oils in it that are going to come out and season that oil. And that's pretty much the cold method. Using them, of course, you know how to use them. If you want to make them, you're just looking for something to give you a little more kick to your flavor. They work really well. Hot oils that are infused, you generally do that when you're cooking your product. So if you're going to, I don't know, you're going to saute anything, you put a little bit of oil in the bottom of the pan. As that oil's heating up, you can put your herbs and spices in that oil. As it heats, it's going to break down those spices and it's going to infuse that hot oil, and you're going to use it at the very same time you're going to cook it. Doesn't give it as much depth of flavor as it does when you're using a cold infused, but it does add something to it. It's just another thing, like if you're going to saute off a chicken breast, if you infuse that oil with lemon rind and whatever, garlic or pepper, it's going to just deepen that lemon pepper flavor you're going to get, in addition to your normal seasonings.
All right. It says, there's a cooking technique called deep fat poaching, where you submerge the product in the desired temperature, examples 165 degrees Fahrenheit for chicken. But I also know that deep frying is at a low temperature would make the product greasy. Would 165 degree Fahrenheit oil make the product drink the fat?
Yes and no. When you're talking about like sous vide style cooking, sous vide is when you submerge your product. It's encased generally in a vacuum bag, and you submerge it in a standard temperature, a controlled temperature water bath. That's sous vide. Kind of like poaching, but with much more. Poaching can make your foods dry out. If you keep it in a poaching liquid that is too hot for too long, boiling dries out a product. Sous vide is keeping it at 165. It never goes above that, so your product can never dry out. It stays at that temperature. Now, when you do that with oils, it's one of the oldest methods to store food. It's called confit, and it's usually duck confit or goose confit, where they take the product, they render the fat from the goose or duck, and then they cook it at low temperature, like the legs, breast, whatever, in that oil. The trick is you're not using a breaded product. If you stick a breaded product in 165 degree oil, you're right, it's going to be a sponge. When you take it out, you could wring the grease out of it. The thing that makes things crunchy but not greasy is the high temperature seals it. And that makes it crunchy on the outside and the oil can't penetrate. So when you're talking about doing a low temperature oil bath like that, a confit, you're not doing a breaded product. You're doing a pure meat product, a protein. And that's how they do confits. And then you just take the whole thing, put it in a jug with its own fat, and it'll store for a long time.
Alright. What would you recommend if I'd like to keep a product warm on the stovetop if my desired temperature is lower than the lowest heat?
Large problem. It is. There's really, the whole thing is using the stovetop. I know exactly what you're trying to do. You know, you want to keep sections of the meal warm while you're preparing everything else, so you can plate all at the same time. But your stovetop is too hot. A lot of the newer stoves, the oven will keep a warming temp that's a lot lower than what normally is out there, like on your stovetop. But to keep it on the stovetop without having to fuss with it, there's really no way other than using, you know, like just a standard warmer, chafing dishes or a bain-marie, like a hot water bath. Sometimes, well, for sauces in particular, if you take a pot of boiling, get water boiled, take it off the heat, put your product on top of that pot, it'll keep it warm because of the steam. But other than that, you have to get a different utility to do it. You can't do it on the stove. So it's finding actually another piece of equipment.
All right. Let's see. I've been experimenting with latkes, fish cakes, and other assorted patties. However, I oftentimes find myself making almost a casserole type thing instead of a patty. It breaks up on me, and although it tastes good, I'm disappointed because it doesn't bind, even with using an egg. Do you know what I could be doing wrong?
Starch content. That's all it is. It's starch content. The egg white in particular is the binding product. The yolk is the fat. So if you're adding egg whites and it's still not holding together, it's the starch content of what you're doing. There has to be some sort of filler in there. There has to be some sort of gluten or starch to keep it at its shape.
Like flour.
Yes, basically. Flour, panko breadcrumbs, any of that stuff will bind it. And that's a very common thing. So you're not alone. It happens all the time. That's why when you're doing like crab cakes and you don't want to have them all bready, you just want big pieces of lump crab in there, they're very, very delicate, very temperamental. So when you put them in, you want to get it to where you can make a patty of it. And you want to put it in and flip it once because it's going to break apart. But it's starch to liquid. You know, if you're using a product that's frozen and as it thaws, it's going to release liquid. That's going to make it run. So basically make sure your product is as dry as you can get it when you start, and you just got to keep fussing with the starch ratio until you get it to where it will hold a patty when you make it.
All right. I've also been experimenting with gas streaks and have been doing great. Can you tell me more signs to look for in terms of consistency? I have a thick sauce, the sauce as thick as I can get, and not vinegar hard candy.
Actually, the last part of your question answers your question. What happens with a gas streak is the amount of sugar you have in it, you're actually kind of getting into confection. So you have to start looking at temperatures for sugar. Once sugar gets to certain heat temps, it changes the molecular structure of that sugar. And you're right, if you keep it too hot, it's going to go to hard candy. Low, just keep it low and let it simmer down. You want to take out the liquid from the gas streak in a nice, slow, even manner. Don't let it get too hot or the sugar's going to go to crack stage and you're going to have candy. But that's pretty much it.
All right. When making risotto, how do you know when you've added enough cooking liquid?
That's actually a really good question. I was talking with a chef friend of mine last night, and he just started laughing. He's like, "When's the last time you measured anything?" And once you start doing these things and you do them a lot, you really don't measure. I mean, there are definite. You can look up recipes for risotto, and it's going to tell you if you have 1 cup of rice, you're going to add, 3 or 4 cups of liquid slowly over time. What I look for is, what does the rice look like? You want it to be, it looks almost like pearls. It's going to be translucent in its taste, basically. When I do risotto, I know it's going to take at least 3 additions, and you'll tell how quick it starts sucking in that liquid. Towards the end, it's going to take a longer and longer time for it to absorb that liquid. Once you get to that point, all I do is take a spoon and taste it. See where that rice is, al dente, and you can kind of judge how much more liquid it's going to accept. The variety of consistencies in risotto allow you to play with it. If you go to Venice and you have their golden risotto, it is very runny. Tastes incredible. So they added more liquid at the end. Now, if you want your risotto to sit in a timbale mold, then you're going to have to add less liquid in the end. And it's just, again, it's doing it, looking at it, and tasting it. Once you taste the rice and you feel where it's at, you'll kind of get an idea. I need to add a cup more, a cup more liquid. Do it again. If it absorbs all that real quick, taste it again. And then figure out what your consistency at the end is. Because if it's cooked and the rice has absorbed all the liquid and you want it looser, add more. You can never take it out. So make sure you do it in that way. Keep it thick until you get it to where you want it.
All right. How long are you supposed to rehydrate things like mushrooms and raisins? And is rehydrating raisins called blooming?
Yes, I've heard it called blooming. There's another word they use for it, and I can't think of it currently. As far as time goes, I honestly don't know, because each product is going to be different. A raisin that you soak in alcohol is going to rehydrate at a different rate than a mushroom. You've dried morels that you're going to rehydrate. It all differs. Some of them only take, half hour. Some things take, you want to put them in for a long time. If you're trying to infuse raisins with flavor, a lot of people will put them in. You can't overhydrate them, so they'll put all the flavors they want in, throw them in the fridge, and let them sit. It just depends on your product. How porous your product is depends on how fast it rehydrates.
If you have to serve something sometime after you cook it, what is the best way to keep it warm?
I prefer water. Bain-Marie, which is your basic steam table, to me is the best way to keep something warm without burning it, because it's a moist, indirect heat, and it'll keep something for a long time. We talked about that earlier. You can do it on the stovetop. Just get a pot with some water in the bottom of it, get it up to temperature, and then place your product. You don't want it to hit the bottom of the pot. So you can place it over the pot, you can have it, stuck on the sides of the pot. As long as it's not on the bottom so it's getting direct heat, it'll stay that way for a good while. And
that's kind of like the serving dishes you get, like at a, where it has
basically
2 pans and a...
When you're doing it on a stovetop, you turn it on, you get it boiling, you put your product on there, you let it sit. It's going to reduce in temperature, but that water maintains the temp longer, than other things. So basically, you just, depending on how long you have to keep it, you're turning your stove on and off. So you turn it on, get it up to temp, put your thing on there. When you see it start to cool down a little bit, turn the stove back on, get the water back up to temp, and then it's going to sit there for another 20 minutes.
All right. Is it possible to make the burnt part of a creme brulee in a boiler?
Broiler.
I thought that's what I said.
Oh, I thought you said boiler.
Broiler.
Yes.
With an R.
With an R. Yes. If you have a good high temp broiler, you can get it real close. The idea is to caramelize those sugars right now. So if you have, particularly if you have a gas stove, you can do it in a broiler quite easily. Electric is a little more difficult. I just find it more fun to use a propane torch. Fire, yeah.
Of course you enjoy the torch. Alright, moving on. I've heard that if you salt beans when cooking, they never get done. Why is that?
There's a question I don't know. I've honestly never heard that. Jeff has, but he's never actually tried it. So I don't know. I'm going to have to research that.
Maybe that's a specific type of bean.
I don't know. He says Jeff has heard that, like
kidney beans or something.
Well, again, it's like an old cooking fable that if you salt the beans first, they'll never get done. Don't know why it is. Never tried it, so I don't know. But I'll see if I can fight with them and get it to happen.
Oftentimes, when I cook with adequate oil, my product sticks. Is there something wrong with my pan?
No, probably not. A lot of that has to do with the temperature of your oil. The rule of thumb, hot pan, cold oil. So basically you want to bring your pan up to temperature, then you want to put your oil in it. And the temperature of that pan, as soon as you set something in it, it's going to stick a little bit. You want to leave it alone. It's like if you ever put hamburgers on the grill and went to turn them and they kind of stick to the grill. A lot of times, even if you oil it, they'll do that because it hasn't made that crust yet. So a lot that happens when you're putting something in. If you're using a batter, the trick is to put it in slowly so it doesn't touch the bottom of the pan before it makes that crust, and that has to do with temperature. So I'd try cranking the temp up a little bit. Even if you have to crank it up to start and then reduce it to cook, you want to get that good seal on whatever you're putting in there, and that'll keep it from sticking.
All right, and the last question is, what qualifies as a game animal?
I like Jeff's response to that was, can you hunt it? But then again, we could hunt cows, although the farmers would be upset with us. I think it's just a general term people use for things that aren't commonly found in your grocery store.
Like deer.
Deer, elk, aardvark, antelope, things that you know.
I mean, the A's.
Yeah, generally, when I think of what you get at a grocery store, it's pig, chicken, beef.
Farm animals.
Yes.
If it's a farm animal, it's not a game.
Now, a duck and goose kind of go both ways. Turkey kind of goes both ways. Because a duck that you buy in the store, I would not consider a game animal. But a duck that you have shot is. The taste is different. It's like anything else that's farm raised. If you go out and catch a catfish and you eat that catfish, it is going to be completely different than something you bought that's farm raised. There's a much better flavor to it and a much better...
it's like the wild flavor.
A little bit of wild flavor and the consistency. The consistency of farm raised animals is soft and mushy. Don't like it. I mean, we have to deal with it, but it's not as good as if you would buy something that's free range or wild. Chicken. Everybody in the U.S., chicken has the most bland flavor ever. If you go out and shoot something...
Shoot a chicken?
They had wild chickens, they before they were domesticated. If you're in South America and you shoot one, it's going to taste completely different. Free range chicken, that's why people love it, because it tastes different. But a game animal, again, is something you can go out and shoot. Not readily available in your store.
All right, that's pretty much it for the questions from Miguel. Once again, this is episode 68, so we put a lot of time into this. We were talking before the show, and Chuck and Jeff are going to look into putting together a cookbook.
Yes. Companion edition.
So you'll be able to get all the recipes that we've had all the way back to episode 1.
We know you can already get them on the site.
Sure. But there'll be some more insight and whatnot into the cookbook.
We're going to have the tips and tricks. We're going to have the history of the food if we can find it in a general PDF version. And our subscribers can get it for free. And we're going to put it out in a series. Instead of having to take all the time to make one big cookbook, we'll put it out in chapters. And like I say, if you're a subscriber, you can go ahead and grab that. Won't be up yet.
No,
It'll
be some time.
Give us a little while on that one.
We just decided it about
4 days.
I think just after the apple pie episode.
Shut up, jackass.
because we just decided we're going to do this about 30 minutes ago,
Roughly, yes.
and I decided to announce it now. So we're going to be doing that. Thanks again for all the people that are following us on Twitter. I really hope that some of the people that are following us on Twitter would start following us on the show itself. And you can follow us on Twitter at restaurant_food. You can send us questions like Miguel, and as you can see, we do respond to all questions at
restaurantfoodfast@gmail.com.
There you go. And you can come visit us on the site at restaurantfoodfast.com.
Thanks, Gordon.
I like the...
We need to change the name of this show to Hungover Cooking.
We can do that. Maybe that'll be our next thing. And anybody out there who has an idea of how we can get the word out for the show, shoot us a line, let us know. We were trying to figure out ways to grow our community before the show.
We have a good, solid base.
Yes. And we do appreciate it, you guys.
Yes, good, solid base. We're not marketing gurus. So if any of you guys have some more tips and tricks, we put this question out a while ago, and we did get some good responses. I don't know if we put it out on Twitter, or did we actually do it on the show?
No, we did it on the show.
And we got some good responses, and we followed through on some of those, and that is...
That's got us some more... That's grown our community a little bit.
And some opportunities, too.
Yeah.
So
we want to just grow our community a little bit more, so...
Yeah, what do you guys think about YouTube? Do you think condensing the show down and giving a 10-minute version would be good, or do you think that's not good?
Yeah, we're going to leave this question up to you guys. I mean, as far as editing it, I can do it either way. What do you guys want? Do you want the show quicker, slower, faster, longer, whatever? We can do that.
Morty and more dresses?
I refuse to wear a dress.
Again?
Again?
But he loves the puppet.
I do want to do puppet shows, but we'll leave that at that. So, until next time, I'm Ward.
I'm Chuck.
It's Restaurant Food Fast. We're out!